聞きがたし今すでに聞くこの身根性において今だどせずんばいずれの章に向かってかこの身をどせん大衆もろともに死神に三宝に消えし立て祀るべし自ら仏に消えし立て祀るまさに願わくば主情とともに大道を大下して無常意を起こさん自ら法に消えし立て祀るまさに願わくば主情とともに深く教蔵に一って知恵海のごとくならん自らそうに消えし立て祀るまさに願わくば主情とともに大衆を通りして一切無下ならむ。Good evening. Thank you for coming. Glad to meet you. Glad to see you to see you. I'd like to introduce my younger brother from Japan 2-3 days ago. This is my younger brother. We are quite resemble. He has a temple in Japan. We have some picture. If you look at later. I had the same temple before I came to this country. Now he is taking care. And here some priest and his wife, Kyoga-san, my sister-in-law, and also my wife, please. Yes, this is my wife. Thank you. Yes, we will go back. We will see. Yes, I like to receive your any question about Buddhism or some other question. Do you have any? No. Okay. I explained about the emptiness of all beings. It's okay. Yeah.
Nico, I think this might work better. It's heavy duty.
Oh, is that right? Okay, thank you. Oh, wonderful. Hey. Okay. Okay. I need more. Little upper. Yeah. Yeah. I like to explain again once more about emptiness because this emptiness doctrine is very important, very basic Buddhist teaching, and also this doctrine is quite different from Western thought. Therefore, I hope you understand it, clearly and correctly. So, I explain to you everything is the product of dependent origination. it is no exception. Everything in existence in this whole world arises according to the dependent origination. There is no thing exists by itself independently. For instance, this flower does not exist by itself. It exists with other existences, like this vase and this table and this floor in this house and this air and water, sunlight. If there is no sunlight, it doesn't bloom. Just like everything exists, helping each other. There's no thing which can exist by itself independently. That is a Buddhistic point of view. Therefore, that everything exists cause, and we have many different causes, like primary cause and also environmental causes. I think that this plant, rose flower, has a root and a stem, or those leaves. That is a very dialect causes. But also, it has another types of causes: sunlight, pressure, and heat, or air, breeze, soil, and fertilizer, and so on. We have many indirect causes. Then all those causes, get together, help each other, and produce the effect of this flower. The flower does not bloom accidentally, by chance. It has causes. That is a Buddhistic thinking. If there is, if this exists, that exists. If this does not exist, that does not exist. If this ceases, that ceases. So this and that are depend on each other, like this. That is a doctrine of dependency, we call. All Buddhist teachings are, or how to say, theorized on this dependency. So I show you the example. This is flower. Picture of a flower, of course. It has a matter and color, smell, touch, beauty, and name, and so on. Many attributes or belongings, characteristics, activities, or cause and effect. We have so many attributes, we say, generally. But those attributes or substance, we say sometimes, that it's a self-existence. Usually, we call it. This is a subject. Sometimes we say, of course, flower has no subject, and yet, real. But most of people understand flower must have some own subject, subject. That is Western thinking or realistic thinking. Sometimes it is dualistic thinking. Subject and characteristics, subject and substance, subject and appearances, phases. Those ideas are dualistic idea. Then that it has a color. When it has a color, it must have another, not color. Concept of color, alike. When people, cognize the concept of color in his mind, he must have an opposite concept of color. What is the opposite of color? Maybe it is non-color. Non-color. What is non-color? Maybe darkness. Darkness and color or light, maybe, we call, they are quite opposite concept. Therefore, when we have a color, we must have some darkness. That those two concepts must be related to each other. Okay, I wish to explain color is only, color is attribute belonging to this subject of color. And also matter. That is belongings too. And the touch is a feeling. When we touch this, I feel something, little cool, and this, soft, feeling. That is a feeling, touch. And also smell. All flowers has flower smell mostly. That is most of people understand flower has a smell or beauty or color, but it is not correct. Flower has no color. Why? Because color is a human sense, or sometimes we call sensation. We feel it. Smell is also, it is a sensation. So human sensation, not the color, flower sensation. Sensation belongs to the human side, not to the flower side. But most of people misunderstand it. Like this. Flower, it smells. It must, flowers smell. Smell belongs to the flower. That is wrong. It is a mistaken understanding, false understanding. And also beauty. Flower has beauty. No. Beauty is a human judgment. Human, that's an idea. Flower has no beauty. Some people, feel nothing. When a horse, eat it, without no feeling of beauty. I don't know, but I suppose. so, so the beauty belongs to the human sensation, no? Or feeling. No? It doesn't belong to the flower itself. And the substance is also, some people think, no, these laws has a matter. No? Matter is some kind of, that's, how to say, uh, some substance, no? Substantial element. But matter is not a substance. It is a human idea. But most of people understand matter is exists by itself without human, understanding. That is called materialism. Materialism is of course, not correct. It is a false idea. Matter does not exist by itself independently without human understanding. Human understanding or human mind cannot exist by itself without something causes. So of course we have many causes, that help each other, then produce effect. But there is no effect in the causes. Cause and effect are very quite different. And not so much different, of course, if there is no cause, no effect. So they are related, cross-related each other. That is dependent origination. We call it praticca samutpada in Sanskrit. So, at first, we like to understand everything has no self-existence or self-nature or self-substances, self-belongings. That's why we cannot cognize it. This is, this has no color, no substance, no characteristics. Now, how do we obtain it or grasp it? It is impossible. It has no color, no substance, no smell. How do we catch it? We can't. So we call it empty, or emptiness, or nothingness. In Sanskrit term, we call shunya or shunyata. Shunyata. That is emptiness. Emptiness is ungraspable. That is, that's why we name it emptiness. Some people misunderstand the meaning of emptiness. Empty, like a void in the sky. So it doesn't exist, doesn't, that's visible, doesn't touchable. It is untouchable, ungraspable, unconceivable, unperceivable. That is the meaning of emptiness. Therefore, that this flower is empty because it has no substance. no characteristics. No? So we cannot, see it. How do we see it? How do we see this flower? When we see it with our eyes, so I, feel, that something. That is, sense of color or sense of, eye sense, we say. This stimulation become a cause of perception. This perception become a cause of a concept, in our mind. Concept is a mental image. It is imagination maybe. We have an image of this flower in our mind. This image is knowable, cognizable. Our that mind can cognize this own image, mental image. At that time, we can understand it. That's why human understanding is not, understand this flower directly. No, we need some mediator between, flower and our mind, something which is called concept. If we have no concept of this flower, we know nothing. We have no image of this flower. That's why concept is so necessary in our, cognition or knowledge. But most of people do not know this important concept which exists between, our mind and, object. That is human stupidity. I'm sorry to say that. I'm also, sometimes forget, my, concept. I know this flower. No, I cannot know it. No, I cannot, know it. Just I know my concept. So I can bring my concept home. Then I remember it, at home. Oh, that's a pretty flower. I saw this evening. But that is my concept of this flower. Every one of you have your concept of this flower. Your concept, which you can bring it with you to your house. Then remember any time you like. That is your concept. Okay? There is no common concept. Each person has a different concept which belongs to own individual. That's why, there is no common understanding. Common means is a same understanding by the people. My understanding must be quite different from your understanding because concept is different. When we make a concept, we need, some judgment in our mind. Judgment is in our judgment, we need past experience that is called memories. We, that have a judgment compared, that the new, that image and with the old images or memories. Then we, judge it. What is yes? It may be this was, that's, kind of flower called rose. I ever seen. I saw many times like this flower in my past life. I call it flower. People call it flower. And this kind of flower is especially special flower, which is called rose. Rose is a kind flower, but this is special flower, specific flower in a flower. Rose flower is a quite a different flower from all other flowers. That is, concept, knowledge, or definition sometimes we call it a definition of the rose. Not even definition is not different from concept. Your concept of flower is not a flower. You have to know that. Your knowledge of flower is not flower. Your knowledge of rose is not rose. You don't know what rose is, what flower is. Any questions so far? This is very, very important. Yes, ma'am.
If I have no eyes and cannot see the rose, no nose,
Yeah.
no feeling,
Yeah.
cannot touch it, does it still exist, even though I cannot conceive of it,
Where
positive value of it?
does it exist?
Are we dependent on each other? Is the rose, is that flower dependent on my
Yeah.
seeing it, on cognitive
That's
value?
true. That's true. So you saw it, and you have a concept of this flower, so you know it. If you have no concept of this flower, you don't know this flower. Is that right?
I don't know of it. Does it still exist?
I don't know. How do you know that? You have no concept of this flower. So you don't know that this kind of flower still exists. How do you know that? You wish to know. Yeah, that is very, how to say, contradictory, Yeah. Only you know which you have experienced. That's all. Yeah. Any other question, please? Okay, I have another picture. This is okay. I can do that. We use this again.
I have more.
Okay, thank you. It's okay. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, you can use it. Okay, next time. Okay, this is not good. Oh, hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? This is a not good picture. This light is very limited. It shines. It's shining very limited area. It is candle light is not so strong light, so it doesn't go far. But some people, understand light exists by itself without darkness. And also darkness can exist without light. Everything exists by itself independently. This is realism. This is a very, very bad illusion. If there is no darkness, there is no light. When there is no light, there is no darkness. They are, correlative. Correlative, depend on each other. Just like a front and the back on my hand. Just like from the paper, newspaper has the front of the paper and back of the paper. There is no paper without front or without the back. Just like so, there is no light without the darkness. There is no darkness without light. But most of people, have a realistic, idea. So they understand, everything like a light and the darkness. They know that, of course, light and light are quite opposite concept. They know that. Those opposite concepts, each of them exists, independently by its own self. That is very, very ignorant idea. I show you why it is. This idea is ignorant or illogical idea. That this light, does not reach to the darkness. Do you think the light can reach to darkness? Or darkness can reach to the light? No. Okay? Light cannot reach darkness, so darkness exists. If it reach to the darkness, darkness cannot exist anywhere.
What if a room is only partially lit?
Partially. Okay. Yes, many people understand so. Not only you. Okay. That is wrong. That light never reach to the darkness. If the light can reach to the darkness without so it can reach all the darkness in the world. And also most of people light can break darkness, but it is impossible. It doesn't reach to the darkness. If light can reach darkness, darkness darken the light. They are, reach each other. This one reach to J. This one can reach to J. So they, so they, must have some boundary. But there is no boundary, between light and darkness. Just like I explained the other night, life and death have no boundary. Some people understand, when life, is finished, then death, come appear. Or the death comes. But that is impossible. You know? Because, that death, that doesn't come while someone is still living. And if this person died, then death doesn't come to the dead man. Okay? Death doesn't come to the living man, and also death doesn't come to the dead man. Living person have no death, and the dead person have no death. Is it true? So we have no death. You can't have a death. During you are living, you cannot die. After you die, okay, you have no life anymore. So you cannot die. You have no death any time. Even you are living or you are dead. Death is quite beyond, it is beyond, to touch. Beyond reaching. Just like light. Light does not comes to the darkness. So we call it darkness. If light comes to the darkness, we don't say it is darkness. It is light, brightness. Okay, any questions so far? Yes, sir.
Well, it's just, it's a matter of how we perceive things, like, the way we look at things relative. We
Yeah.
see it relatively.
Yeah.
Like, if you're in a room and you shine a bright light,
Yeah.
spotlight on the wall, it appears that there's a boundary.
Yeah.
And that's where the confusion comes in. Then we say, well, there's darkness and then there is light.
Yeah.
But that's because we can't, if the light is so bright relative to the not bright.
Yeah.
And so, but if we turned around and looked the other way, we could see. We could see that it wasn't dark, the room wasn't dark. It was just because of the relative.
Oh, very well. That's I'm surprised to hear that. You can see darkness. You can you see a darkness?
Relative to the light. I could see relative darkness.
Okay. Can you see something? Closing with a closing eye.
Could I see some of that?
With closing eye.
No.
No.
Except in a dream.
Okay. Then can you see the darkness with your eye?
Relative is.
Yeah. Can you see the light with your eye?
Relatively.
Relatively, no. No. Of course, that is light you mean, is a concept of light, not, light itself. If you have no concept of light, you don't know, why you cannot see, that the light itself. That is, you say that light, that is concept. That's a different from light. Hi. Hi. So, any question, please? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So there's, say for temperature, if you have hot and you have cold,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're actually seeing temperature and it's all one thing.
That's right.
It's just degrees.
That's right.
Same with light, that's luminosity. So you're seeing one thing at 1 degree, it's
Yeah.
darkness or no luminosity, and at the other end it's a lot of. But I don't understand about death and life. What would you call that 1 degree?
Yeah, that 1 degree. No separation, no.
There's no separation, but what could I
Yeah, that is, both are concept. Both are concept. Concept are same concept. No? But all concepts are illusion, not real.
But I'm
That,
worried about it.
yeah, that's why, death and life both are concept. That's why, you cannot, that this is real, this is unreal. You cannot say that. Yeah. All human concepts are not, real things. It doesn't exist anywhere. It is like an illusion, that's the moon, the second moon in the sky. It is like a, moon, shadow of moon in water. It is not real moon. Where is the real moon? In the sky? No. Moon is always in your head. Okay, any other question, please? Okay, then, that we call light is empty. Darkness is empty. No? Therefore, we cannot grasp it. What is darkness? Empty, ungraspable, unconceivable, ununderstandable. That's why, that's we shouldn't forget it. No, we should forget it, ignore it. There is nowhere, where light exists. Light is only big illusion. It is like own image in a mirror. When look in the mirror, you can see your face, in mirror. Is that you? No. Is that the mirror? No. Is that the light? No. What is that? Unconceivable, ungraspable. Because image itself in the mirror is illusion. It is Maya in Sanskrit. Maya is phenomena, phenomena, like a phantom. So it is, very deceptive, things. Yeah.
Is everything that you can say my to an illusion?
My?
Is anything that you can say my, this or that, an illusion?
My is its own your, you mean? Your what?
My anything. Is that
Anything.
necessarily an illusion?
Yeah, your body is illusion. Your mind is illusion. Do you have any other real thing?
There
Do
is
you
no
have?
my,
My?
there is no me, there is no...
Yeah, there is no I. There is no self. Self is a big, illusion. Yeah, you don't have self. No.
What about his car keys?
Car key.
His car keys?
Yeah.
Are they illusion?
When you understand it, car key, that is a big illusion. Car key itself is not illusion. Now when, this is my car key, but it is not your car key. That is a big misunderstanding. Car key does not belong to you. Car key is not actual beings. Car key does not exist by itself. That's why car key, is just empty. But only you think this is my car key. That's all. That is your misunderstanding. So forget it. There is no car key anywhere. When you understand, so car key is, is real car key. Because you have, car, a key, then you start the car. Without knowing it is car key. It is natural, relationship or natural course of the car. When the car start, it needs to the key. So car and the key are no separable. But most of people, this is the car, this is the key. No, that is not realism. Everything must be one, not two. This one flower. It is whole thing is laws. If we put take the petal, take it the petal, one petal out of a flower. What is it? It is not a petal anymore. It is not a flower. It is not a piece of flower anymore. Just like I cut my finger. It is not my finger anymore. Whose finger? It is not finger of anybody. So, that when this finger is here, in my hand, we call it my finger. But if I cut it accidentally, it is not my finger anymore. Is it a finger? I don't know. Is it not a finger? I don't know. I cannot affirm or I cannot negate. There is no name. Is it not a finger? I don't know. Is it a finger? I don't know. No, everything is like that. I take this pedal. What is this? Everybody, you don't know that. You can call it empty. Yes, it may be empty. It is such. Yes, it is such. It is middle path. Yes, it is so. It is something. Yes, must be. You can say anything. You can think anything. But it is, that's empty. When we, that we cannot put it to the flower anymore. Everything is beyond human understanding. Human understanding is very limited. We should know that. And also, not limited, not only limited, that the human understanding are, delusive, deceptive, incorrect. There is no correct understanding anywhere. Any question? You have no right understanding. If you have a right understanding, please show me or tell me what is the right understanding. Yes?
It's conditional understanding, always.
All understanding is conditional, some people say. But, that is one, way of explanation, conditional. I think that is better, explanation than, everything is, really actual and, existence. There is no actual or real understanding, existence anywhere. Everything is conditional. That is a little better, explanation, but still explanation. Yeah.
More like relative than conditional.
Yeah, relative. Relative is, the understanding is illusion from the beginning.
It's
The-
relative in the sense that if there's an understanding, then there's a preconceived notion of what the outcome is to be.
Yeah,
And it's relative if it's not known, if it just ends up where it began.
Yeah, that's a relative, that's correct, you mean? Or relative understanding, you mean? You said?
Yeah, relative.
Relative what? Understanding? Or relative,
Relative to the concept that you're trying to understand now.
yeah. Oh, but, I'm saying all human understanding is illusion, delusive. So it doesn't exist anywhere, even partly or partially or completely. Understanding is not correct. No? The understanding is only mental problem. That's why I can't understand this flower. What is this flower? No? When I can understand what my concept is, concept disappear right away. No. If I do not understand the concept, what the concept is, concept exists in my mind. But the concept itself is illusion from the beginning. Therefore, it is, it is not a true existence. It is not true, actual beings, actual truth, true existence. It is illusion, like in a rainbow. It is like that's a moon. The moon in water, reflected in water. It is like a shadow. It is like a echo. Yes, sir.
What about the moon reflecting in the water, but nobody seeing it? Is that real?
How do you think? I'd like to know. What do you think? It exists?
Why should it?
I don't know.
Okay. Do you think dream exists?
Dream? Possibly.
Okay. Do you think is there any person, living person exists in your dream?
Possibly.
Possibly?
Well, I guess you're looking for no, but
Yeah. In our dream, that all that images in our dreams are dream. That's not a man, not a tree, not the actual beings.
what if you dream about somebody who you've never met and then you see him the next day?
Yeah. That's, we don't know because dream belong to individual. Yeah, we cannot see others' dream. No? We cannot understand others' dream. Just like that, we cannot understand others' understanding, and others' feeling, others' happiness, others' suffering. No? So, that we should know everything. All human understandings are conceptual, happening. Conceptual happening. So it is not true or not false, not right, not wrong, not good and not bad. Beyond comparison, beyond judgment. beyond graspable. We should know that. So we must get and put it all, understanding outside of from our mind. So, and then your mind become pure and clean, no problem anymore. Okay, please, anytime will you give me your question or your topic, anything, and also your an understanding. Yes, ma'am.
When you say your mind becomes pure, what mind becomes?
I don't know. I don't know we have a mind or not.
But you said those words, your mind.
Yeah.
You mean individual mind?
Yeah.
Yes?
Temporarily we say so like this. This is flower, temporarily, I say. Okay. But I don't know what flower is. But I call it.
So then you don't know what the individual mind is.
Yeah. Mind is also like this flower. No? I call it, I name it flower. But I don't know what flower is. Flower has no nature, flower has no beauty, no smell, no color, no substance, no characteristics, no aspect. Then what is color? No, the flower. I cannot understand it. I cannot, conceive it. No? But I can say it flower.
So then you apply the same thing to personal mind.
Yeah, that not personal. I have no personal, personality. Personality is a big illusion. No? Temporarily, I can say it flower, but I know there is no flower. When we talk with human beings, okay, at that time, don't you think this is flower? I know it is flower. People say, I say. That's why we have a name. It has no name itself. When we say flower, that is flower, term of flower is the name of group. Not only this. All, flower. All are flower. No? Flower is a general term, one general name of the flower family. So it is not individual name. Just like man. You are a man, I am a man, he is a man, she is a man. Man is so many billions of individuals. It is not the name of each person. That's why you are not a man, I can say. Because you are not a group. You must be an individual. So if I say you are man, it is wrong. That kind of logic is mistaken. Yes, sir.
Isn't an individual an illusion?
Yes. Do you know why?
Because if there is no self,
Yeah.
how can there be an individual?
Very good.
There'd be
Yeah, you are right. Yeah, there is no individual visual anywhere. There is no group anywhere. Yes, ma'am.
Also, you don't offer us any practice so that we can realize that all of our conceptual thought is illusion.
Practice?
Some kind of practice.
What kind of practice? Show me.
Well, there are lots of different practice in the world.
Yes, all practice is, I'm talking, this is practice.
This is practice.
Yeah. So I'm, saying, cha-cha-cha, that is my practice. No? We have hundreds, thousands, all human behaviors are kind of practice. Yes, sir. Oh, okay, later, okay.
So when we meditate,
We try to go beyond judgments and perceptions. We try for emptiness.
Yeah.
And yet thoughts come and go, and emptiness is very hard to understand.
Yeah.
And because we cannot understand anything,
Mhm.
how do we know emptiness?
Yeah. Emptiness is not existence. Emptiness is yes. You know, that everything has no, self-nature. That's why we cannot conceive it. It is beyond human understanding. That's why we name it empty. So it is not empty, of course. But temporarily we say it is nothing. It is empty. It is just voidness. That is only upaya. Upaya means tactful means. Everything is not empty. You should understand. I showed you before, Nagarjuna said, everything arises according to the dependent origination. We regard it as emptiness. But it is the phenomenal reality, that is, the temporary name. It is phenomenal reality by virtue of its appearances. It has an appearance. Therefore, we call it a temporary reality. But it is also, that at the same time, the middle path. This is the middle path. This flower has three different names. One is provisional reality. That is, phenomenal reality. Because it has an appearance. We can see it with our eyes. That's why we say this is a temporary existence. Yeah? Okay. Yeah, just a minute, please. Please, give me that.
So emptiness is a method of dealing with relative reality?
No. Yeah, not a relative. Emptiness itself is beyond, relative. Relative means, we have two things, cause and effect. If we have a cause and we have an effect, when we have no cause or causes, we have no effect. That is emptiness. Something exists. At that time we have a relationship or conditional, theory. But everything is pure empty. Where is empty? There is no emptiness. That's why, emptiness is unconditional truth, I would say. It is unconditional. Hi. Hi. How are you? It is emptiness and the middle path are the unconditional. And only, that's a relative theory. That is the doctrine of causation. That is, mundane theory. Mundane theory is only to be called the relative existence. Yes. Emptiness is not a relative existence. It is supra, mundane, or not conditional. Any question? Other question? I forget. Patricia. Oh, will you explain to me your problem, your question? Not problem.
My problem is
Yes.
I have all these concepts
Yeah.
about everything.
Everything, yes, I
And so
understand it.
I want to throw those out.
What?
I want to throw them out.
Oh, forget it.
Forget throwing
Yeah,
them out.
yeah, because you know that concept is another concept. That concept is another concept. Another concept, another concept. You know, it has no beginning, no ending, no between.
So I must continue to act on the concepts I have.
You have a concept,
Yeah.
it doesn't belong to you. If you are thinking, you know, I have a concept, you know, I have an illusion, but the illusion doesn't belong to you.
Who does it belong to?
Huh?
Who does it belong to?
Yeah, good.
Who?
Who? Oh, the concept itself, it does not belong to you. Concept is not real, not actual being. It is
Where's
not
it come
true.
from?
Come from,
Yeah.
from misunderstanding, misjudgment.
How can we understand?
Huh?
How can we understand?
Understand, you shouldn't understand. It is empty. You cannot understand it. When you have a concept, you will forget it, ignore it, just throw it away. Yeah, because you cannot possess it. By illusion, you know. Just like a dream, you know. You you know, that had a good, you know, dream last night. You shouldn't possess it. You know, you have some kind of sentimental, you know, sentiment. You know, I like this dream. I can possess it, but impossible. No. You cannot possess or keep your dream all the time. Dream is dream. You know, you cannot keep it. Yes.
So I get the feeling that you or me, we can have nothing in this life.
Is this flower nothing?
Nothing is a concept.
Yeah, nothing of concept. What is this flower? Concept? Of course not. Not this is flower is not concept. I think even you have a concept of flower, but that is not this flower. Okay, this flower is quite different from your concept of this flower. No, that's why, you know, you have you know the concept is wrong. No. Yes.
How does phenomena truly exist?
You know, that's a phenomena that truly exists. You know, that is the most of people, you know, understand phenomena, phenomenal reality is real and true existence. You know, many people think so. No? But it is not, you know, true existence. It is called middle path. Middle path or suchness, because you know it is everything, you know, that is, you know, or has no self nature. No, that's why it has no, flower has no self nature. No, so what is self nature? Self existence, no, self substance, self smell, self color, no, self appearance. So it has no characteristics, no phases, no substance. No, so we call it, you know, empty, nothingness, temporarily. No, it is not you know, nothing. No, temporarily we call it nothing. Okay, this is suchness. It is perfect flower. No, so this is not, you know, empty, not temporary existence, conditional existence, but it is as such, as this, as that. You know, that is suchness or middle path. Okay, you can understand that? Yeah. Yeah, that, you know, you have a wisdom, you know. So you can easily understand it.
If we accept the dependent origination, then it necessarily follows that we accept that.
No, that is, that's a dependent origination. That is one extreme idea. No? Because everything has no nature, no substance. No? How does it arise? Everything doesn't arise,
Well,
appear.
if everything arose together at one time,
Together with what? Existence or non-existence?
however, but
Huh?
if talking about it, we say that everything arises, is dependent on each other.
Yeah,
and
each other.
arises together.
Yeah, dependent. All the things which is which arises by the theory of dependent origination cannot arise, because when this arise or exist, this should be should arise. It should arise first. Then this cannot depend on it.
But if it arises at the same time, then
No, it is impossible. Cause and effect cannot exist at the same time. No, it is impossible.
well, then it isn't. If it does truly arise at the same time, then it wouldn't be cause and effect.
Yeah. So
There could be no cause and effect.
cause effect cannot exist at the same time or at a different time too.
Yeah, I understand that. So if there was no world, nothing,
Okay.
and then all of a sudden there was everything came into existence at one time, we could not judge anything because it all come together at
Yeah.
one time.
I see your idea. That is an accidentalism, we say. Accidentally, everything exists, at the same time, just accidentally. That is not causation.
I didn't say accidentally. You said accidentally.
Yes, okay. So you understand the meaning of accidentalism, So everything cannot exist, Everything is beyond existence and non-existence. Causation theory is a theory of existence.
I must have really misunderstood because I thought that dependent origination had nothing to do with causation.
Maybe so. Causation is the only part, of the dependent origination. The origination, duration, and cessation, all are, that's dependent, dependent on each other. Not only origination. Duration is so. All existence, all existence, related or not related, depend on each other or one another, then it exists, not originate, exist. And also when it disappears, and everything, that's related to each other, not related, the dependent on each other, one another. So it could be, or it can be, gone. That is cessation. And the dependent origination is has three phase. How say that's three nature. One is origination, duration, and cessation. Most of people, things, all beings have an origination and to exist. Okay, so in a certain time it exists, then it disappears from this world. But everything does not, is not originated from the beginning. Therefore, there is no cessation, durations. No? There is no origination and duration. Therefore, there is no disappearance or ceasing. No? Everything is as such. When everything appears, yes, everything is appeared as such. When everything, durate, as such, and it goes as such. Such come, such go. That is Tathagata we call. That is the true nature of the Buddha. Everything is Buddha. Such come, such goes. Yes.
Could that be described as here and nowness?
Describe what?
Could that also be described as in the present or here and now?
Is there anything here at the present? Is there anything you think? Do you think? Which exists at now? How do you think?
If I don't think, it does.
Yeah. You have no concept, You don't know that. Yeah. So you shouldn't affirm anything. You shouldn't negate anything, because affirmation and negation are same thing. If you have no negative standpoint, you cannot affirm anything without negation. It is very foolish things, and it exists. He has no negative standpoint. So only foolish people. Flower exists. That is very accidental, accidentalism or accidentalist. So we cannot say. We cannot affirm anything without a negative, standpoint. At the same time, we cannot negate anything without affirmative standpoint. If I negate without a big affirmative standpoint, that is my ignorance. That is my stupidity. Okay, any question? No question. Because question is something, you wish to some affirm. Therefore, that's, if you have no negation, if you don't, you understand my, my concrete standpoint, which is wrong. If you understand so, at that time you can make your question. Otherwise, you cannot make a question to me. Negation and affirmation are same thing. You cannot make only question, because I said before, all answers is in your question. If you understand, that the true meaning of your question, you have answer in it. All answers in it. Because question and answers both are concept. Yes.
Is it that our questions represent one side of a duality?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, question and answer are two extremes of one thing. There is no question anywhere, because everything is such. If we understand such, there is no question anymore. Question is why, what, how, that is not such. Yeah. Everything is such, this is such, quite such, as you see it, as you know that, as you understand it. That is such. Okay? But, your understanding is wrong. That is such. Yes.
But, okay, a question is never such, but an assertion.
Oh, just a minute.
Oh.
All question is such.
What?
All question is such.
Oh.
Illusion is such. It has a causes. It has reasons. Therefore, it is such. Because all suchness is empty. That's why we call such.
What about an assertion?
Assertion is such because it is empty. All negation is such because it is empty. No? All that's things. That's mental things or physical things. Which has no self nature. That is such. This has no self nature. This has no self nature. This plant has not self nature. My rosary has no self nature. That's why this is a wonderful suchness. Yes.
Questions have no
Yes, question is such.
no self-nature.
No self-nature. That's why it is such. It has a reason. Why? Where? That question come from? Means no understanding. It has a true, right reason. Therefore, it is empty. No? There is no, question, in the misunderstanding. No. Misunderstanding and the question are quite a different thing. No. Therefore, misunderstanding is not true. That's why we call it empty. That's why we call it such. That's why we call it temporary existence. No? All negation and affirmation both are such. It has no meaning in it because it is illusion. All illusion is, that's empty. Illusion is not real. This is illusion. Illusion is not real. That's why it is empty. Empty flower is such flower. It's a very, very tricky. Many people say, understand it. Maybe that is tricky, a little tricky, but it is not tricky. Yeah, it is very, that's very clear logic in it.
Well, we understand that when we ask the questions, that they are empty and that they're illusion and all these things. When we ask the question, we know that, but
Yeah.
we ask them so that you can use it as a method.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
you can hear something
Yeah,
better.
that's right. I know that. That is only the upaya, You know everything from the beginning. You don't need any question, asking, inquiry. You don't need that. You know everything as such in your bottom of your heart. I know that, because, but you wish to, make a question as you are the representatives of many questioners. Yeah, you know that, but I like to ask like this for the people. You are very, very kind, sincere person, you know. Kind person. Surely.
I'm empty.
Yeah, that is empty. Of course, that is empty. That's why you are, you know, such. You know, you are such person. You know, that is such person is called bodhisattva. Bodhisattva, enlightened person.
But then we all are, so he can't
All
be
are.
special.
That's right. He is not special. Everybody. Everybody. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Should we meditate on suchness to see it
Meditation?
more clearly? Meditate on suchness to see more clearly the suchness, or to eat it better, or something?
Yeah. When you practice meditation, you have no idea, no thinking, no concept, nothing. Pure, you know, practice of voidness or emptiness. That is true meditation. You know. But you know, people, you know, that you know, have some kind of desire, you know, to enlightenment. I like enlightenment, so I like to grasp or you know, attain to enlightenment. Now that is a big illusion.
I cannot grasp suchness because I am suchness, and you cannot
Yeah.
take hold. You can only be.
Okay.
Suchness.
Why do you practice meditation?
It feels good. to sit there.
No, that is not good. That is enjoyment, you know.
It feels bad.
Yeah, that enjoyment is a very bad illusion. No, meditation is not, you know, so comfortable. Yeah,
Not pleasurable.
not pleasurable. No, not enjoyable, and not, you know, difficult conduct. You know, all are, you know, that's you know, own illusion. As such, everything is as such. Comfortableness is as such. You know, happiness is as such. Suffering is as such. You know, you cannot possess it. No, you cannot attain to the enlightenment. No, because you are enlightened already from the beginning. You cannot, you know, attain to enlightenment twice. Enlightenment is a practice of enlightenment, yeah, you know, and meditation is a practice of enlightenment. We can say so. But we are enlightened from the beginning with the Buddha. We don't need to attain to the, you know, attainment with the practice, you know, of meditation. We are. Whatever we do every day, you know, walking, talking, you know, sleeping, eating, everything is enlightenment. You know, that's why, you know, that practice, that that's a foolish word. We don't need to practice anything. You know, what should we practice? Nothing. When we are born as a baby, we cry, yeah. That is a practice, you know, and of enlightenment. You know? So, you know, that's only practice of paramita, that is enlightenment. Some people understand that is wrong. You know, 6 paramita is not only the practice. We have 100,000, you know, the millions of practice, all daily, you know, the practice, you know, way of life is a practice of the Buddha. We are the Buddha from the beginning, not the Bodhisattva. People misunderstand it. That's why we are, you know, the reaching to the Buddha's, you know, position. No, we are suchness from the beginning. We are Buddha. We don't need we don't, you know, we don't need to go for force or slide back. human beings are Buddha, enlightened, awakened. No? Because suchness. Because you are empty. Because you are human beings. Human beings and Buddha, there is no difference. No? If you think, that I'm not Buddha, that is wrong. I crashed. Okay.
That's like saying an angel, because an angel
Mhm.
is an angel, is in heaven if he is here.
Yeah.
Simply because that, yeah.
That right, angel is a bodhisattva. Messenger of Buddha. Oh no, God. That's why enlightened. Yes.
Do you sit still and meditate? Is there a reason for
Yes, I am meditating now. Can you see it?
Well, did Buddha, Siddhartha, did he sit under a tree, the Bodhi tree or the
Yeah.
Bodhi? And
Yeah, Bodhi tree. He
is that
was,
there?
yeah.
Is that very still?
Yeah.
Why? If not,
Yeah, he showed us, okay, people, Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. That is the supreme equal enlightenment. Not his enlightenment, okay? Most people do not understand. This is the enlightenment of all, beings. Only some people, Buddha himself, awakened. All others were sleeping yet. His enlightenment is only personal enlightenment. People understand, so. This is not Buddhism. I declare it. It is not Buddhism. Buddha is equal enlightenment. Everybody is equal to me. My enlightenment is everybody's enlightenment. You have to understand your Buddha nature. You should awaken, wake up from the sleeping, in the burning world. So you wake up. Now you should wake up with me. That is Buddha's enlightenment. People misunderstand. We are, human beings. We someday in the future, in the far future, we will be, go close to the Buddha. That is Hinayanan Buddhist idea. So we are, that's a Buddha without any practice. This is most important. We are the Buddha from the beginning. That is Buddha's, idea. We call Buddhism. Not Bodhisattvaism, not humanism, not Shravakaism, not practical Buddhism. Buddha, I am a Buddha, you are Buddha. When I am Buddha, you are Buddha. Everybody is a Buddha. From the Buddha's eye, everything is Buddha, awakened, and enlightened. When you, find out your true nature, Buddha nature, you can say so. You can see everybody, who are Buddha, who is Buddha. Is a concept? Don't say that. Concept is empty. It doesn't disturb anything. Yes, I showed you before. I think this is maybe a different picture, maybe. I think this, I like to conclude, this, with this, I'm short, huh? I'm short. Okay, I am short. Okay, crooked. Yeah, up, little up. Okay, yeah. My brother is higher than me, so. Okay, thank you. Okay, I showed you this picture before once, no? But that this picture is very good, very suitable, to the discussion we have had this evening. That's why I offer. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I have one more. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All beings in existence in this world has three natures. One is, phenomenal reality. That is, that people think, see it, as other people see, have it. This is real existence. That is, not real, but it is temporary existence. Human, thinking are very, very realistic. That's why it is illusion. Okay, this is Prajapti. That is a temporary phenomena or temporary reality, we say. But it is not reality. Reality must be a permanent. This is not permanent. So it is not a reality. But we call it a temporary being. So all that beings which arises, by the doctrine of dependency or dependent origination are temporary existence. Therefore, it has no self-existences, or self-nature. This is called the provisional being. This is a provisional being. This is provisional beings because it arose, this morning. Then it is getting decay. And also, someday, tomorrow, after tomorrow, it, will be gone. So become empty. Not empty, it is become disappearance. Appearance. This is the, causational, how say, dependent, that the being of dependency we call Prajapati. Prajapati. We have many different names. Paratantrika or Pratantrika, that is another name. And this is, this is also, empty because it has no self-nature in it. It has no color, no substance, no characteristic, no activities, no beauties, and no value in it. So on. Therefore, it is ungraspable. We cannot, obtain it. And we cannot conceive it. We cannot understand it. it is also undescribable, unexplicable. That's why we call it empty. This has, but also, this is not empty because it is touchable, it is visible, it is tangible, it is pretty. So it is not empty, and not the product of causation, because it has no causes. If it has no causes, no causes, it has a causes, it was not in the causes. It did not come from causes. If it has a causes, cause or causes, it should be in the causes. But there is no flower in the causes. There was no flower in the earth. There is no flowers in water or in the soil, in everywhere. So the flower itself is not product of causes. Where did it come from? It is so right now. Flower is not continuous existence. Flower is not changing because it has no nature. So each minute, each second, flower has a different shape, different color, different nature, different relationship, different variation, but it is it. It is flower. So this, the kind of flower is called suchness flower. Suchness flower is empty, but not empty. Suchness flower is a phenomenon, phenomenal reality or provisional reality, but it is not provisional reality because it is empty. Not empty, but empty. It is not, reality, but it is reality too. It is not such, but it is such. Can you understand that? Yeah. People, human, mental ability cannot, reach to the flower. So flower is such, or not such, not empty, but empty. It is, the phenomenal reality, but it is not reality. So we call it such, or middle path, or enlightened beings, or pure beings, Buddha nature, enlightened being, nirvanic nature. We have many, many different explanations of words, many words, many ideas, but not them, all of them, but all of them are such, real. This point is very difficult point. Buddha knows by himself. Buddha could design it, with Buddha. Buddha can understand this kind of truth with the Buddha, not with a bodhisattva, not with Shravaka and Pratyeka Buddha, not with human beings. Buddha can understand the Buddha's wisdom. but we are the Buddha. From the beginning, we believe the Buddha's words. You know, that is, Buddhism. Okay, any questions so far? This is conclusive. Okay? Okay, wonderful. Patricia?
What can I say?
Yeah. You don't say nothing, anything. Yeah. If we say something, that we feel some, coolness, in our lips. So we better keep silent. Yes, sir.
Well, you're saying that you can't believe in other person's dreams, you can't believe in other person's experiences. Why should we believe in Buddha?
Yeah, you means the dream is real? No.
It isn't real.
Then dream must be unreal. Which is the light. Dream is illusion, or dream is right.
Both.
Both what?
Both are true.
Both are truth. That is we call antinomy. You know the antinomy?
Antonym?
Antonym, yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. It is dualism, same term of dualism. Yeah. East and West are, not one, not two. If we say East equal West, that he must be wrong. He is stupid. Yeah. If someone would say, that the East and West are same, that is also, that's stupid. And if he says they are quite different, opposite each other, he must be a dualist. He are telling lie. He should be telling a lie. Yeah. So, dream is real.
Well, it isn't real.
Unreal.
It's unreal.
Unreal.
I guess it's unreal.
That is stupid. Yeah.
Well, which is it?
Not real, not unreal.
That's what I said.
Yeah, nothing is to say anything. You cannot say anything. But everything is such, like this. You cannot affirm anything. You cannot negate anything. You must be always neutral and the middle path.
But how is belief in Buddha middle?
Believe in Buddha?
Yeah, how is that middle?
Oh, that the middle is he is an enlightened person,
So say you.
like you. Yeah, don't doubt it. You are the Buddha. Don't doubt it. Buddha said.
But I might perceive that I'm the Buddha, but
Yeah.
it wouldn't be because Buddha said it.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody is the Buddha. Everybody is the Buddha, like me. He said, when he attained to the supreme enlightenment, equal enlightenment, at that time he said, "Oh, this is so wonderful. Everything is like the enlightenment, enlightened being, like a Buddha, awakened man, At that time, he said, "Oh, I am the Buddha. When I am the Buddha, everybody is a Buddha, like me." That is Buddhism. No other Buddhism in the whole universe. That is Ikayana Buddhism. So you must find out your true nature, Buddha nature, enlightened nature. Yeah. If you cannot understand with your mind, you don't need to understand it. Believe the Buddha's saying and trust him. Put your trust in him, in his saying. Yeah. That is very easy practice. Not necessary to practice 1 day, 2 days, 1 year, 10 years. So 1 second, you accomplish enlightenment. That is Buddhism. You are the Buddha from the beginning. But you forgot it someday. When you came to this world, you cried from the mother's body, At that time, you forgot everything. But remember now, you are the Buddha, Tathagata. Yes.
Well, my experience has been that if I treat people like they are enlightened, like they have Buddha nature, if I treat them that way, if I treat people, if I act to them, toward them, as if they have enlightened Buddha nature, they think I'm nutty.
When you find...
In America, it's not popular to do that. You know what I mean? It's in Japan and other Oriental countries, it's very, people are very humble to each other, and they do have a great respect for the nature, the Buddha nature of each other. It seems that in this country, I don't want to say it everywhere, but my experience has been that if I act toward another person, not everyone, but many people, do not understand or respond. They are not, they think I am nutty to do that. Kind of off.
Yeah.
See?
That it is not so important you know or not. You can understand or not. Buddha said, we believe in the Buddha's words, Buddha's teaching. So it is very difficult to understand it. Even now, it is very difficult for me to understand Buddha's saying. And it is very difficult to become the Buddha and to be the enlightened. But only I trust his words. So, Buddha said, you are the Buddha just as I am. I believe it. That's all. And Shariputra also, all Buddha's, disciple, Shariputra, Mograjayana, Kashyapa, Subhuti, all, the disciples, could not understand his wisdom. Their wisdom is a dualistic wisdom. It is still, dualistic. Not the Buddha's wisdom, same to the Buddha's wisdom. But they believed to the word of the Buddha. Buddha said, Shariputra, you cannot understand, the my, how to say, Sarvajana. Sarvajana is all-knowing wisdom. You are practiced only dualistic wisdom. That pranya paramita is not, understandable. So you are you attained, the bodhisattvas, the standpoint, but not the Buddha's standpoint. But remember yourself, you became the Buddha with me long, long time ago. And you were the Buddha at that time. Okay? But you forgot it. So you are, you thought you are the human beings. Therefore, you have only limited, wisdom. Now you remember your all the experience. And we practice the Buddha's practice long, long years, kalpas, under me. So you became you came to this world as a human being. Then you became the Buddha, disciple of Buddha. That Buddha is Nirvana Buddha, not the original, Dhammakaya of Buddha. The Buddha showed us the enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. That was a human Buddha. It is very limited, it is like I show you. This is human reality. He has a three body of Buddha. People can see only phenomenal body and phenomenal conduct. So human body is still very limited. You must remember your old history. You and I were enlightened, beginningless beginning. And we accomplished being Buddha. So now you remember yourself. And you must, understand you are equal enlightened Buddha with me. This is Ikayanam teaching of the Buddha. If you wish to know that, you read the Saddharma Pundarika Sutra. Buddha taught it many places. Yeah. So someday I like to show you, Buddha's, saying. Very easy. Saddharma Pundarika is a very 28 chapters. Just this kind of books. We have 3 different editions in English. So you can get, about $25, $15 a piece. Each book. So you can read it. Yes, sir.
Question is that the Sutra?
Lotus Sutra, yes, sir. Saddharma Pundarika Sutra. Lotus Sutra. Usually we say so. Yeah. Yeah, I think you should read it. That is the final teaching of the Buddha. Yeah. His enlightenment, his Buddha food his enlightenment, everything I explained in that small book, 28 chapters. This is very good for you. Yeah, I hope. Yeah, please, next time I like to talk little more. And will you prepare your question? Question is wonderful. It is Buddha's conduct. I never say it is stupid conduct. You know everything, but you make a question for other people. Okay, thank you very much. I'm so appreciated. Thank you. Thank you.
His teaching very difficult.
Yeah, my English is not so bad, good. Okay, see you next time, please. Thank you. Thank you.